Pakistan is one of the largest refugee hosting nations in the world. It is home to millions of registered and undocumented people who have fled Afghanistan. UNHCR Regional Director for Asia, Indrika Ratwate, spoke of the current situation of refugees in Pakistan.
I think the main challenge right now is to really continue to provide support to Pakistan in hosting them and the host communities, and also give access really to skills and education for the young Afghan population here. I think if there is a comprehensive peace negotiation which really brings about sustainable peace, which all the key stakeholders are striving to achieve in Afghanistan, many Afghan refugees will want to return home.
Now, even after the voluntary return of 4.4 million Afghan refugees since 2002, Pakistan still hosts millions more. Now, according to the UNHCR, Pakistan has nearly 1.5 million registered and over 1 million unregistered Afghan refugees. More in this report by our correspondent, Mr. Isa Naqvi.
The son of Afghans who fled the war in their country and took shelter in Pakistan. Shawali was born in a refugee camp near Islamabad. This small settlement just outside the city houses about 5,000 Afghan refugees. Wali says he will not leave Pakistan, even if he is given an option to return to what many would call his home country.
I work in a close-by vegetable market. I have no wish to go to Afghanistan as I was born here. We thank Pakistan for allowing us to live here. I have Pakistani friends here, and if asked to go back to Afghanistan, then I have offered my friends to go there with me.
Wali is not alone. Pakistan's hospitality has won over many like him who now call this country their home.
My mother and father came here. I have never been to Afghanistan. All I know is that there is war in Afghanistan, but here we live in peace. I cannot go to Afghanistan.
Experts say the influx of Afghan refugees to a struggling economy like Pakistan has always had socio-economic repercussions. Pakistan's generosity has not been fully acknowledged by the international community.
The issue of Afghan refugees in Pakistan has been like a festering wound. With the arrival of the refugees, particularly in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan province, we saw a rise in crime, social crimes. We saw a rise in the drug trafficking.
On her visit to Pakistan last year, former UNGA President Maria Fernanda Espinosa called for compensating Islamabad for housing millions of Afghan refugees. But the pledge has yet not been translated into action. As the peace talks between Taliban and the US finally seem to be making a headway, and the holding of International Refugee Conference in Islamabad, there are hopes for a voluntary, dignified and sustainable repatriation of these refugees to Afghanistan. Reporting for Indus News, Isa Naqvi, Islamabad.
For more on this, we have with us Mr. Masood Rahimi, an analyst joining us from Kabul. Thank you, Mr. Rahimi, for your time here. Now, Pakistan has been hosting Afghan refugees for over 4 decades. How has it contributed to making their lives better here?
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us with your programs. For sure, it's 40 years from 1980 until right now. The Pakistan is the main country of the world. They give place for millions of humans. More millions was from Afghanistan for they escaped from the wars. That situation was going on in this country. They get 2 supports for Afghan peoples. One of the part of the wars between Afghans, Mujahideen with the Russia militaries. The second support was they gave the Pakistan place for second house of Afghan peoples. We are really appreciated. We appreciate for much support of government of Pakistan for our refugees. And this is the main guest in the world that they give support for Afghan peoples, and we appreciate for much support of United Nations that they stand behind the government of Pakistan and refugee bases, and they gave the highest support for Afghan nations. We appreciate it. For the meanwhile, we have already war is continued right now, not done it yet. In maybe 1.5 million our populations, or maybe 2 million is living right now in Pakistan in safe place. They will continue their education. We have reports from Pakistan, many times from our peoples. They are happy with their education, with their lives. They are safe with everything. Now we are hope that the USA and international community it's not a discussion between Taliban.
Mr. Rahimi, the concern is for also those Afghan refugees who were born here in Pakistan. They consider it their home now. Will they be happy or will be able to adapt to go when they go back to their country after a peace agreement?
For sure, one thing I want to mention for viewers, when the peace real come in Afghanistan, we tried too much when we broke the ratio also in Afghanistan, but we was hope for the peace. But the peace is not coming in. The Taliban again come to Afghanistan, and they stopped for the wars. It was the bad situation for Afghan peoples. Our peoples that live in the Pakistan when they have citizen of theirs, so already they are born over there. So they will come with their parents. Those people, they are really not trust. Is it right? Is it true that the real peace is coming in Afghanistan? No. For sure, if the real peace has come to Afghanistan, they will decide to come in their country, and they will be join or participate with their peoples for build the new Afghanistan for their lives.
Mr. Rahimi, thank you so much for joining us on this news bulletin. Moving on, Pakistan has been one of the longest serving and largest contributors to UN peacekeeping missions for the last 66 years. Throughout the decades, Pakistani missions have served across the world, including Africa, Central Europe and Central Asia. More in this report.
Pakistan deployed its first ever contingent in Congo in 1960, where it provided logistical support to UN troops. The country has since participated in 41 peacekeeping missions in 23 countries, with over 150,000 peacekeepers. During these missions, a total of 137 Pakistani peacekeepers have embraced martyrdom. Pakistan is one of the largest troop contributors with over 8,000 peacekeepers, constituting over 9% of the UN's total deployment. Earlier this month, Pakistan's first female engagement team was awarded the UN Medal for its services in Congo. The 15-member team, including psychologists, logistic officers, and nurses, were awarded in South Kivu.
Moving on to India now, the Anti-Citizenship Act protesters in Delhi's Shaheen Bagh have started a march to Union Home Minister Amit Shah's residence. Now, protesters said the step is being taken because Shah announced anyone who has a problem with the act can come meet him. Meanwhile, the district administration in Moradabad has issued a notice of $140,000 to organizers of the protests. The notice said protests have led to extra deployment of police, increasing the expenses of security forces. The Modi government has been facing protests and demonstrations for the last 3 months, in which 27 people have been killed. In China, 142 people have died in the last 24 hours due to the new coronavirus outbreak, bringing the death toll to 1,665. The National Health Commission says 2,009 have been confirmed infected, increasing the total number of cases to 68,500. Details in this report.
With hundreds of deaths by the novel coronavirus every day, China claims the number of new cases has dropped for the third consecutive day. Chinese health officials say the drop shows that the epidemic is controllable overall.
There are 2,641 newly diagnosed cases of the virus, 849 newly diagnosed acute cases, and 143 new cases of deaths from the virus, of which 139 are in Hubei, 2 cases in Henan, and 1 case each in Beijing and Chongqing.
The World Health Organization says the global community should join efforts to develop a vaccine for the new coronavirus. The global health body said it will also financially help develop medicine, and make it accessible for everyone.
We need to make diagnostics, we need to make vaccines, we need to make treatments, and we also need to communicate more effectively with our populations as to how they can protect themselves. And we've seen that in communities in China and Singapore. We need to empower our communities.
Tens of millions of people in China are still facing heavy restrictions on their day-to-day activities as part of the government's efforts to halt the spread of the virus.
And we'll take a quick short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now we'll be talking about Nigeria, where 30 people have been killed in attacks on 2 villages in northwestern state of Katsina. Police said armed bandits burned 21 people to death, while 9 villagers were shot dead in Dankar and Sauwa. Police said motorbike riding assailants made off with food and livestock after the attack. It said investigative teams have been deployed to the villages. Hundreds of people have been killed in Nigeria's northwest since last year in robberies and kidnappings. The death toll continues to rise as the African country is struggling to contain militancy and gang wars. In Burundi, authorities have found over 60,000 bodies in 6 mass graves in Karusi province. Burundi's Truth and Reconciliation Commission said thousands of bullets along with the human remains from the graves were recovered. The commission chairman said clothes and glasses were used to identify some of the victims. In the country's 12-year-long civil war between Tutsi and Hutu ethnic groups, 300,000 people were killed by 2005. The state-run commission was set up in 2014 to investigate atrocities from the start of colonization in 1885 to 2008's peace deal. The commission has mapped over 4,000 mass graves across the country and identified more than 142,000 victims of violence. In Palestine, Israeli warplanes have carried out multiple airstrikes in the Gaza Strip. In a statement, the Israeli army said its fighter jets and helicopters targeted Hamas installations after 2 rockets were fired from Gaza. No casualties have been reported yet. Tensions between Israel and Palestine have been rising since US President Donald Trump presented his Middle East peace plan. Trump's plan gives Israel a green light to annex key parts of the occupied West Bank. Moving on to Iraq, where multiple rockets have hit a US-led coalition military base in Baghdad today. A US military official said the assault sent warning signs blaring across the green zone. There have been no reports of casualties or significant damage so far. The attack comes just hours after one of Iran-backed groups of the Hashd al-Sha'bi military network announced a countdown to oust US forces from Iraq. In a tweet, the group posted a picture of American military vehicles saying they are closer to the US base than expected. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack yet. Since October, it is the 19th attack to target either the embassy or the US troops in Iraq. Russia says it will continue searching for ways to resolve crises in the Middle East, North Africa, and the Persian Gulf. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow wants to stabilize the global situation. Lavrov said Russia intends to promote a balanced approach for a fair resolution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. He said Russia will stand for the unacceptability of substituting legally binding decisions on Iran's nuclear program by illegitimate unilateral actions. Speaking about the Syrian conflict, Lavrov said Russia and Turkey have a very good relationship, but it does not mean that they agree on every issue. The foreign minister said converting the Middle East into a theater of geopolitical competition and using terrorists for the attainment of goals is unacceptable. French President Emmanuel Macron says Europe is about to become a continent that doesn't believe in its future. Speaking at Munich conference, Macron said European countries have to accept the disagreements and cannot be a junior partner to the US. Macron said Europe needs to strengthen its defense for greater sovereignty, But he said greater European military cooperation was not a project against NATO. He said common security in Europe has two pillars, that includes NATO and Europe of defense. Macron also said that Europe requires the ability to act independently and produce its own policy.
If we have no freedom to act, then we have no credibility in foreign policy. And we can't be a junior partner to the United States of America, because sometimes we have disagreements that we have to accept. On Iran, we have disagreements. If we haven't found all financial and economic and military sovereignty, then we can't have a proper foreign policy.
Britain says its post-Brexit rules will turn off the tap of foreign low-skilled workers. Interior Minister Priti Patel said all skilled workers will need to earn enough points to work in the UK. Patel said foreign workers will need to speak English, have a firm job offer, and meet the salary requirements to enter the country. At the moment, EU citizens are able to move freely between the member states. Brexit campaign was fought over immigration rules in a bid to bring down the number of people arriving in the country. This year, London and Brussels will negotiate the terms of a post-Brexit deal, which will come into force on 2021. Now, Facebook says online harmful content should be regulated by using telecoms and media industry's existing rules. Speaking at Munich Security Conference, CEO Mark Zuckerberg said Facebook has improved its work countering online election interference. Zuckerberg said his company employs 35,000 people to review online content and implement security measures. He said Facebook's automated technology suspends over 1 million fake accounts each day, and the vast majority is detected within minutes of signing up.
I think that there needs to be regulation in at least 4 areas touching our company. And they are elections and political discourse around content more broadly, content moderation, privacy and data portability.
In India, stand-up comedy is becoming an increasingly prominent art form. But those comics not towing the ruling BJP's narrative are being subjected to censorship and intimidation. This report has the details.
Satire is a part of the political narrative in most modern democracies. But this can't be said for India, where anti-government comedians are facing a two-pronged attack of censorship and state intimidation. However, Kunal Kamra, a prominent anti-BJP comic, says this doesn't bother him.
Censorship will only improve me. It will make me sharper, it will make me wittier. I know all the laws, I skirt around it, and I say what I have to say.
Kamra was recently banned from a number of private airlines after heckling a prominent pro-BJP TV anchor during a flight. The move has been condemned widely as an excessive use of state power. Despite all that, Kamra managed to find his way to Singapore, where the Indian diaspora is eagerly buying tickets to his show.
It's a lot about Modi, it's a lot about the political situation in India. So he weaves it in very well in jokes and the messages comes out. So it's not for everyone, absolutely not for the Modi supporters, but I think people who are very much balanced and who are aware of what's going on in India. So they would love his shows.
New Delhi is struggling to put a lid on mass unrest since it introduced the widely unpopular Citizenship Amendment Law, which has been condemned as anti-Muslim. Time and again, the BJP government and its supporters have resorted to high-handed tactics against protesters. This includes numerous shootings at demonstrations as well as violent threats.
Dubai has become home to the world's largest 3D printed building ever constructed. The structure took only 3 workers and a printer to be built. More in this report.
Dubai is known as a city of opulence that constantly tries to outdo other tourist destinations. After Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, the city has now become the site of a new architectural feat, the largest 3D printed building in the world, with walls 31 feet high and 2 stories spanning 6,900 square feet.
We in Dubai municipality have started researching on 3D printing. We have done a very long research, came up with a beautiful building with a 2-story. It has been registered by the Guinness Records book as the first.
US company Apis Core built the structure using only one 3D printer, which was moved around the site by a crane. Using 3D printing instead of traditional labor, the production cost of the project was reduced from over $680,000 to around $270,000.
The city has changed quite a lot over the last 5-10 years, and there's a lot more requirement for affordable units. So if you're able to have an industry which is able to produce units at a cheaper rate because the costs are lower, because there's such a significantly lower requirement for labor within those, that means the end product is likely to be a lot cheaper as well.
The government says the building is a move towards sustainability using local materials and efficient installation to reduce energy consumption.
And now for some business news. Libya's UN-recognized government says the country will face a catastrophic financial crisis due to oil blockade by General Khalifa Haftar's forces. Libya's oil output has fallen sharply since January 18th, when the rival group started a blockade of oil terminals and fields. Head of the Government of National Accord, Prime Minister Faisal Sarraj, said the losses from the oil shutdowns have exceeded $1.4 billion. He said the 2020 budget will face a deficit and will drop to its lowest levels. Sarraj said foreign backing for his rival Khalifa Haftar will only prolong the conflict in the country. State-run National Oil Corporation warned earlier that oil output will eventually fall to 72,000 barrels per day from about 1.2 million previously. Haftar's Libyan National Army and al-Sarraj's GNA have been fighting since April last year for control of the capital, Tripoli. Thailand has raised over $3 billion in 5G spectrum auctions. The mobile operator snapped up 48 licenses ahead of an expected commercial rollout later this year. Thailand's top 3 mobile operators, Advanced Info, Service PCL, True Cooperation PCL, and Total Access Communication PCL all bid for 5G licenses. Country's 2 state-run firms, CAT Telecom and TOT, were also bidding for the licenses. The telecom regulator did not announce the winners due to the format of the bidding process. Storm Dennis is continuing to lash large parts of the United Kingdom, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. The UK has deployed the army to help with flood relief, build barriers and repair defences. Storm Dennis hit barely a week after Storm Ciara caused disruption to transport, flooded homes and left thousands without electricity. Severe weather warnings are in place for much of the country. The Ministry of Defence said 75 soldiers from Royal Regiment of Scotland have been sent to Likely and Caldervale in West Yorkshire. Meanwhile, heavy rain has been falling across southern Scotland, leading to 3 severe flood warnings for Hawick area in the Scottish borders. And now let's take a look at how the weather is in your city. That's all for now. The latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.